Well, it's the middle of August and unfortunately the AC went out on the old 2008 Honda Civic. Can't expect too much different. It's got 240,000 miles on it and plenty of use, so to be expected. But I've already diagnosed what the problem is. We've got plenty of pressure in our lines. Unfortunately, the condenser needs to be changed. Now, if you were to take this to a shop, you're probably going to be looking at $1,100 to $1,300 to fix it. This car isn't worth much more than that, so it wouldn't be a very wise investment to put money into it like that. So we need to do something else. We can either change the condenser ourselves, but we're going to have to then get all the refrigerant reclaimed. We're going to have to vacuum out the system. We're going to have to reinstall everything. That's going to be a few $100 and a good bit of your time. One thing you can try before replacing the entire compressor, though, is replacing that magnetic clutch that comes on these. Let me show you what I mean. So, the AC compressor is operated by this magnetic clutch. Here's our clutch. Inside this pulley is our magnet. Now, over time, these tend to wear out. And it's not necessarily that your compressor is all the way bad, it's just this component to it. So what we can do for about $65 is buy this part, change it, and see if that solves our problem. Now, $65 compared to a bill well over $1,000 certainly sounds reasonable to me. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to fix the magnetic clutch on the AC compressor. So let's see what we need to do to get that done. Before starting any job, it's important to have the right tools. I wanted to show you all exactly what I used, and I will list all of these out as well. But primarily, you really need a good set of snap ring pliers. Don't go cheap on this. These were $25, but they were worth every penny. Okay, I will put a description of these and a link to them in the description, but you really can't do the job without a nice pair of these. It just won't work, so don't even try it with a cheap pair that you would get at your local hardware store. First things first, we need to remove the splash guard in order to access our AC compressor, which is behind that flap right there. So first thing you're going to need to do is remove all these tabs. There's going to be some here. They're going to be along the rim of the splash guard as well as underneath. You're going to have some back here as well. So you can see I've had mine off plenty of times and it's kind of distorted and some of the clips are missing. But you know what, it holds on, and this car isn't winning any beauty contests, so it doesn't really bother me. You can find these replacement parts at any auto hardware store. They're readily available. Just bring one in, and the customer service rep should be able to find one of those, or many of them if you tend to break a lot of them, because they do get brittle over time. So just let's take those off and see what we're looking at. For demonstration purposes, here's what it should look like as these are pulled out. Simple, right? Not so much. Those are the remnants of the others. Now we'll come under the vehicle and grab the remaining two. 1, 2. That'll remove the splash guard, and we'll be able to pull this part of the splash guard down. Up and out of the way. And you'll be able to see here. This is our AC. This is what we need to change. This is our magnetic clutch right here, and once this is out of the way, we'll be able to access that a little easier. And here's our AC compressor. Now, as you can see, we have access to it right here, but unfortunately, this piece of metal is right in our way, so we're going to have a pretty difficult time getting this off without a lot of strain. So what I believe I'm going to do is actually remove the AC compressor from its mounts, twist it, and kind of turn it in so I have a more face-on view with it rather than how it is right here. There are some snap rings inside of this that need to come out, and this piece of metal being here makes it a real bear in order to get at those. Also, getting this nut off isn't the easiest thing either with this stuff in the way. So we're going to go ahead and remove the mounting bolts for our AC compressor and tackle it from there. Okay, next what we need to do is remove the belt. So find your tensioner and then find a 19mm wrench and then a bigger wrench. We're going to make a little pry bar here. As you push it, you can see the tension that lessening on the belt, and we can just go in and grab it. So I'm going to put the camera down and do that. The first bolt we're going to remove on the alternator is this 12mm. I already broke it loose. It's not going to come off that easy for you. Okay, first one's out. Let's move on. Next up is the 10mm holding this bracket on right here. We're not going to take the electrical components off. It's not going to be necessary. We'll simply flip the alternator, rest it right about here. So all we need to do is take that nut off, unsnap that first, and we can unscrew it from here. And it's not completely necessary to take this bracket off. I like to do it because it's going to get one more thing out of the way so we can rest it on top of the motor a little bit easier. But that's it. This is a little hard to see, and I can't really get a good angle of it, but right underneath our pulley here, right underneath our alternator pulley is another 12mm bolt. So just get up under there, attach the 12mm and back that out. We all got it out. That's probably the hardest bolt to get out of the whole thing. Didn't come out easy, but she's out. All right, we are almost done. One thing I am going to do is release this electrical connection. Then we just need to pull our alternator up and out. Have to shake it a little and get it off its mounting point here. And oops, one more connection it looks like, electrical. Well, we've got one electrical connection that needs to be removed. Just going to take some needle nose. I know you can't see this very well, but you'll certainly see it when you're working on your car. And we'll just pinch it together, move it out of the hole. Real simple. Now, of course, there's one more. There's one more I got to do. And then we will move it up and out of the way. Life will be good. All right. We can move our alternator up, out of the way. With the alternator out, we can now see the AC compressor. We're going to need to take this bolt over here. There's one right back there. You can kind of see him right in there. And there's going to be one on the underside of the compressor as well. So we're going to take these two out first. We might have to remove this bracket right here. Hopefully not. Again, we're not breaking the AC lines. We're going to be very careful taking this apart. We simply just want to be able to turn this so it's facing more of the open section of the car over there. I simply loosened those two first bolts up. Now we're going back under the car. We're going to release these tabs so we can bend our splash shield out of the way and more easily access the bolts that are holding the compressor on. So let's do that. Okay, with the splash shield off, we can easily see the other two bolts we need right here and right here. Again, those are 12mm. We'll just back those out as slowly as the other ones, and we'll be able to turn our compressor. Here we are. The entire goal of all of that work was so we could just aim this magnetic clutch a little bit more at our face rather than having it sit over there. You can see we can move our AC compressor a little bit more. That's going to enable us to reach those snap rings a whole lot easier. So you can see I put a hammer, I just have laying around. You can use whatever you want just to kind of support it on the frame rail. That's why, that's so it's not dangling from the the lines. So you're not going to run the risk of a refrigerant leak or something like that. So that's a good precautionary step to take. Otherwise, now all we have to do is remove this and get to replacing it. So first things first, we got to take off this nut right here. It's going to get the plate off, and then we can get a look at the snap ring inside there. I'm going to use an impact wrench on this. That way it'll just zip right out. If you don't have an impact wrench, you're going to need to isolate this clutch, make it not move. All right, hopefully this just pops off. You don't have to mess too much with it. That's that. Impacts are pretty handy most of the time. And now that the nut's off, we can just pull the clutch off. You can see it's pretty rusted. That's probably a lot of our issue is the rust really plays a detrimental part in these not working anymore. And you can tell there that we've got our snap ring back here. So we will just work to get that off, and hopefully I can capture that. Now we're at the hardest part of the removal, and that's getting the snap rings off. You can see the two little holes there. This is gonna probably, be the hardest part of this fix, and the reason why we really had to disconnect this and get it so it faces us a little bit more straight on. That way we can get our pliers in there easier. You might have to experiment with different size tips on your snap ring pliers. I'm gonna work at this. There's no way for me to get a good video of it, but essentially what we're gonna do, we're gonna line them up, then we're gonna hopefully bend the ring up, and it'll snap right out of there. I'll let you know how long it takes me. I'm happy to report it took no time at all, under a minute. I just used the right size snap ring plier ends here, and it came right out. So if you're not getting it at first, try downsizing, just making sure that the tips fit in the holes, because if they don't, you're gonna have a really hard time. So that should come out otherwise. Yeah, pretty easy. So we can move to step 2. Another helpful tip when trying to remove this pulley, I actually went with a Q-tip and went around this right here and just really trying to get the grit off of it. That way you'll be able to pull the pulley off a little bit better. Also, it's not a bad idea to hit it with a quick blast of lubricant. This is also going to be a little difficult, getting the pulley off. Depending on where you live, will probably make a difference on how difficult it is. That's why we did want to put some penetrating oil on this to see if we can just pull it out, because that's the next step, is to just remove the pulley. So I might have to go from the back and kind of tap it with a hammer if there's room. Worst case scenario, I'll have to put a 3-jaw puller on here and pull it off that way. I'm hoping, crossing fingers, that I can maybe just do it with my hands, but I'm guessing I'm going to have to hit it with a hammer of some kind. So let's see what we can do here. Okay, I think we're getting it. Make a few more hits and we'll have it off. And I'm going from underneath the car using a hammer and a chisel, and going from the back. It's just so close. Just need a little bit more here. There it is. Okay, there we have it. That came off relatively easy. It wasn't the easiest thing in the world, but you can see my strike marks on the back of the pulley. Remember, that's not going to matter. The kit came with a new pulley, so we're okay there. So again, let me see if I can get a better view for you so you know exactly where I was hitting this from the underside of the car. Go under here. You can see, if you come under, you can see where the stator is right there. Let me hang this light up real quick. So came in from under the car. This is where the pulley was. That's our stator right there on the AC compressor. So just coming under here with this tool, setting it on the pulley, and then just hitting that with a hammer many times, and it will come off for you. So hopefully that's the case for you. The next step is removing the final snap ring. You can see it in there, those two holes kind of at the 9 o'clock position there. Unfortunately, it's extremely hard to get to this snap ring with kind of conventional snap ring pliers. You really need something with a longer tip. Like if these were just maybe a 1/4 inch longer, we'd be okay. But unfortunately, the nose of this interferes with kind of the bulkier part of the snap ring pliers. As you can see, I had to spring for a different pair of snap ring pliers. These ended up being just too short and too fat to get that final snap ring. There's no way I could have got that snap ring with these pliers. So using these from the very beginning would have been ideal, but I didn't know that these wouldn't work. So these are about 25 bucks on Amazon. I'll put a link to them in the description, but as you can see, I finally did get that ring out. It was not an easy task, but I'm glad it's out. We can move on with the rest of the removal. With the snap ring finally off, we can remove the electrical components. We need to disconnect the red wire right here and the green wire, which has a screw right here. That way we can pull the stator off. So let's do that. Now that the electrical's disconnected, I can pull the stator off. As you can see, I just cut the green wire. I'm going to end up splicing the green wire from the new one onto the old wire that's attached to this. It's attached with a screw that's pretty hard to get at and even harder to remove. So I'm just going to splice those two together real nicely. It'll have the same effect. So now we can move forward with the installation. Disassembly is complete. Okay, we just need to put the new stator back on. As you can see, I put a little connection on here for the electrical for the green wire, also with heat shrink on there as well. So just need to put that back on. As you can see too, I did clean up the surface and put some grease on it just to keep corrosion away. Hopefully I'll never have to change this again, but just in case, that'll make things easier. So let's put that on. Step one, now hook up the electrical. Wiring wise, that's how that looks. You can see my heat shrink on the green wire. Cutting that wire just enables you to not mess with that screw that you can see up there. You'll probably strip that out unless you are incredibly lucky. But I just saved myself some trouble and just clip the wire and splice it together. Just a little bit easier in my opinion that way. Reinstall the first snap ring. Again, I can't get a good video of this, so you'll just have to take my word for it that it sucked. Okay, the first snap ring is back on. It wasn't easy. I actually took a drill bit and enlarged the holes on the snap ring ever so slightly because the ends on these snap ring pliers are just a touch larger than the holes on the snap ring. I actually used a screwdriver in my other hand to push the snap ring off of the snap ring pliers, and that got it on for us. Okay, and now for the pulley installation. I just set that on the nose, and what I'm going to do is lubricate this surface right here, and then I think just put a 2x4 or some sort of piece of wood here and just try to tap it on with a hammer and see how that goes. Okay, so here we go. This is just a scrap piece of wood, the smallest one I could find, and I didn't want to cut anything, so we're gonna see if this works. Oh yeah. And I think that's it. Now it's time for the O-ring. All right, the second snap ring is in, and I actually ended up using the old snap rings. The new ones just were not the correct size. So I just went ahead and put the old ones in. Nothing wrong with that. They're gonna work fine. And then I had this shim come off of this right here, so I'm just gonna put that back on. Again, that's from the original. I'm not using the package. I assume this one is gonna be the closest match. We'll obviously check the clearance, but I'm gonna use this one. So we'll just slide that back on. And now we can put our clutch back on. Now to put the clutch back on, all you have to do is line the teeth up, and we'll use the new nut that came with the kit. Okay, after we've properly shimmed the clutch, mine turned out to be four shims, we need to torque the nut to 19 foot-pounds. I'm using a pry bar to isolate the hub, so we'll do that and move on. Unfortunately, the old shim was a little too shallow, and the plate was contacting the pulley, so I am going to use some more shims from the package. Ideally, you're going to want this to be a 0.013. If you have a feeler gauge, you can slip those in between the plate here and the pulley. If not, install all the shims onto the shaft here. It'll obviously set farther out, but just remove one each time, reinstall the plate each time you go, and then once the plate is touching the pulley, pull it off one more time and add one shim, and you should be all set. Okay, I was able to get this thing to 19 foot-pounds, 20 to be exact, with the use of this pry bar here to isolate the hub. And it's good. It's a little on the tight side. I don't hear too much friction there. It's not as loose as I would prefer it to be, but I used all four shims. So what are you gonna do? I think we're just gonna go with it and hope for the best there. I'm not too concerned. I think it's gonna be just fine. So I'm happy with it so far. Now the shims that came with the kit are not the right size, and I found this out the hard way. What was happening was I installed all four of these, which gave me the proper gap, but when I torqued the nut down, these tended to kind of misalign themselves and move around. And what that did was it created a high and a low spot on the clutch plate here. So when I turned the car on, it would actually impact the pulley. And I got metal shavings here as a result of that. So what I did was I pulled this plate back off, inspected the shims, and you can see here the factory, the one that came factory, the inner diameter is smaller than the ones that came with the kit. So I figured that was my problem. So I went to the hardware store and I found a stainless steel washer with the same inner diameter as the factory spacer here. So this isn't going to warp, flex, or anything on me. It was actually the exact width I needed to get the proper spacing, so that's what I used instead of what came with the kit. And that might be the case for you too. I would be very wary of using these. I just don't think they sit properly. They're too big. So go to the hardware store and pick up a stainless steel washer with the same inner diameter as the washer that came originally on the vehicle. Good news, everyone. It's fixed. It works. AC is back in action again. This fix, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the hardest, I'd give it a solid 4, if not a 5. And one thing I would absolutely recommend is you reuse your factory parts. The parts that came with this didn't really fit as far as the snap rings were concerned, or the shims here. These are just, they're just too big. So getting a just one washer seemed to do the trick for me. So anyway, that's it. That is the final end to this, and we've got AC again. The cost of this was $65. The cost of my snap ring pliers were about $25. So about 90 bucks, and you'll be on your way to new cold air. All right, and obviously a lot of your time.